What's up, everybody? This is Donnie, aka Elevated, with another video on behalf of Dota Alchemy, and this one is going to be what are the biggest changes that we might see to the Dota map in the new big patch, whether that be 7.22, 8.0, who knows what we're going to see before TI, if we see a big patch before TI, and what could that possibly mean for the state of the game of Dota 2. Looking at the history of the Dota 2 map, we have actually had quite a few significant changes to the map itself, which has drastically altered the way that people play the game. We've had Roshan move twice. We've had the offlane jungle basically turned into a legitimate jungle with enough farm to sustain a hero there. We've seen the shrines added to the game, both in the base and then outside of the base as well. We've seen shrines removed from the game. We've seen the addition of 4 bounty runes and also the elevation of both primary jungles to make them much easier to defend for heroes that are occupying them. IceFrog is always tinkering with little things in the map as well, whether it's moving towers forward or backwards in the lane, making ramps smaller or wider, adding trees in certain spots to block sight lines. There's all sorts of tiny little things that are constantly being tweaked to affect the balance of the game. And that's why I think it's not a far stretch of the imagination that we could see some significant changes to the map coming relatively soon. There are a few reasons why this is very likely and something that probably should happen to the game as well. And the first is that Radiant has been too powerful for too long. We've seen the win rate difference, and ever since the Roche Pit was moved from the very dire favored location in the bottom part of the map to the quote-unquote more neutral spot, which is significantly Radiant favored as it turns out, Radiant has had a massive win rate advantage and has dictated how professional teams approach the game and draft. The next thing about the map that I think will likely see some change in the next patch is that the triangles are too strong. Now, the triangles are the offlane jungle where there are 2 camps and an ancient camp that we basically see every single carry rotate to around the 10-minute mark and then spend the majority of their time farming there until they feel strong enough to start actually trying to win the game. And this creates a very formulaic way of approaching the game, and that's just sort of how it is. The longer a map is out, the longer we're on a patch, the more figured out it gets, and at the moment, we're kind of at that point where everybody knows that you just need to put your carry in the triangle, you need to protect the triangle, you need to invade the enemy's triangle, and then whoever controls the 2 triangles is probably going to be strong enough to then take Roche and end the game later on. And it's not just the triangles that have made the games feel relatively formulaic at this point. It's also the fact that in nearly every game, both teams trade their safe lane tier 1, which then forces them to retreat to their half of the map, which has been split vertically, which includes the triangle. I'm also of the opinion that bounty runes have become far too important now, and while I like the almost scripted nature of every 5 minutes there's probably going to be some sort of engagement because it makes for a very good and entertaining viewing experience, the fact that teams are almost never willing to gamble when the bounty runes are up to, push high ground or take a fairly risky fight on the enemy side of the map is a little bit disappointing, because it would be nice to see these teams forced into harder choices than just saying, hey, let's retreat, let's pick up all 4 bounty runes, and be rewarded for that safe choice with the equivalent gold advantage of killing an entire set of racks. So what are some things that could happen to the map that would shift the balance of Dota and thus how the game is being played? And I think the first and probably least drastic change that I'd really like to see enacted is to remove the ancient camp from the triangle and actually trade it with the medium camp right next to the mid lane. This would do a couple interesting things. First of all, it would mean that the super safe area of the triangle is a lot less valuable to spend a lot of time in because there's no ancient camp, and that means that carries can't just simply retreat there every single game and hope to stay up or even surpass the rest of the heroes on the map. The second thing that this would do is to take away the mid laner's ability to avoid hard lanes by putting ancients where the medium camp is, because no longer would they be able to simply shove out the wave at levels 2 and 3, farm the medium camp, come back to the lane, shove out the wave, farm the medium camp. and they would actually have to deal with hard matchups or go gank or do something else. And I think that this would bring a lot of the skill cap back into the mid lane and reward the people that are extremely mechanically gifted, or the drafters that put their mid laners in a position to dominate the game. Because right now it kind of feels like it doesn't really matter how good you are at mid mechanically, as long as you have the ability to just avoid the matchup and still have the same amount of farm. And finally, moving this camp, I think, would actually make Ancients more difficult to take and a more dangerous objective, which they should be because they're so valuable, because the camp is right there. So it's pretty easy to contest for either team. All right, so let's talk about bounties for a second. Bounty runes were a great addition to the game, in my opinion. Having these 4 bounty runes allowed us to do a number of things. It allowed teams to come back into the game by focusing on collecting bounty runes. It allowed us to have roamers be more of a thing for a while before the bounty runes became a split gold objective. And then they also have guaranteed us lots of engagements. So those are all wonderful things to have in the game of Dota. The fact remains, however, that they're just too important. And so I'd like to see them either nerfed in terms of the net worth that they give you, but that's kind of boring. So I think something maybe a little bit more interesting, like having the location of the bounties be randomized. And this could come in different forms. It could be both bounty runes always spawn on the same side together, and then the opposite side gets the power rune. That might be a way to balance it a little bit better. Otherwise, if you just have it completely random, it might get a little frustrating when you just show up and you're just never getting the bounties and it's just completely luck-based. That's something that mid laners have complained about a lot with the power-up runes, and this might be a way to kind of balance those two things out as well. Either you go for the bounties or you go for the power rune, and those are your options. I'd say one of the biggest elephants in the room of Dota 2 stats people and just competitive scene in general is the Radiant advantage and how much it actually plays a role in determining who wins games. And I would absolutely love to see this addressed in some way, shape, or form. And I won't lie, I don't know the best way to address this, but I think that Ice Frog could potentially change the topography of the map, give Radiant worse paths and ramps to the Roche Pit, give Dire better ones, equal it out somehow in that way, or potentially even do something more drastic like removing the shrine from each off-lane jungle. And what that would do is it would nerf the triangles, which is something that we all know needs to happen. And it would also mean that even though the general game flow gives Radiant that side of the map in most games, they would no longer have a shrine to help reinforce the area. Meanwhile, Dire's shrine, which is technically worse than Radiant's shrine in the Roche Pit area, would be there and allow them to have easier access. One final thing that I wanted to touch on that has been talked about a lot in the Dota community over the last couple of years is whether we will ever see a second Roshan-like objective introduced to the game. And this would really shake up the game, because then teams would have to decide, do I go for the defensive objective in Roshan and an Aegis to give myself better high ground push, or do we go for, I don't know, killing the Archangel and getting a Divine Rapier from the other objective, whatever that might be. But obviously this last part is just completely hypothetical and something that I was just kind of thinking about while I was writing the script for this video. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the things that I touched on in this video and what you think might help balance the map or shake things up to make it a little bit more interesting as we head into the end of the DPC season, or even if we should have drastic changes before TI. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below this video. And for those of you who don't know, Jenkins and I are trying out doing our weekly Alchemy Answers and replay review streams on Twitch for the next couple of weeks to see how it goes. So if you want to tune in for those, it is twitch.tv/DotaAlchemy. Hopefully we'll see you there, and good luck, have fun in your games. Hello everyone, and thank you for watching the video. We genuinely appreciate your time and attention spent with us here on the YouTube channel.